Monique, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Lovely to be with you.
So, I was wanting to know what is one thing that a person can do to manage their time better?
Okay, so one thing that we do in the workshop around that is to set up a time budget, which is a bit like a money budget, but the difference is that everyone has the same amount of time. So it's we can't create more time. You know, we've got 24 hours in every day, but what we can do is we can think more carefully about the way we use that time. So we work with people's existing calendar and their existing schedule to block out the things that are, you know, regular events and existing commitments that they have, and then to look at, well, how much time have we got left around that, and how we're going to best use that to achieve what we want with our writing. Because a lot of people are writing, you know, around their normal jobs and looking after their kids and all those other things that they do in their lives. Although there have been people who have come to the workshops who are retired or who are, in fact, have even taken a year off work to write their book, and they've come along to the workshop to still help them to. I mean, I had one person once came along that it was April. They'd taken a year off work to write their book. It was April and they still hadn't really got started. So they had all the time there. That wasn't the issue, but it was about how do I actually get that happening. So creating a time budget is a good way to think about how you allocate your time and to get that happening.
So I suppose what you would do is you would, set out your little calendar and then, maybe a month calendar just to get you started, and then write down all of the commitments that you definitely have every day, and then see what times work better for you.
Yeah.
Because
well, actually what we do is we start with the full year and set out what are the things, like you might be taking holidays, or you might have, a wedding or things that, you have already in advance. Then we look at the month and then we look at each week. So people might have things that recur each month, like, for example, maybe they're on some sort of committee and they have a monthly meeting or that sort of thing. Maybe they play sport or whatever. And then we look at each week as well. And you've got to remember that, you've got to do all your daily living things. You've got to cook, you've got to eat, you've got to, shower. So I think sometimes people are unrealistic about how much time they really have. And in the end, it's not about how much time, but it's about how you use that. So doing that process helps to, as you say, to identify when might be a good window to make a regular time for your writing practice. So, yeah.
What I've been doing recently actually is getting to the train station like 20 minutes early before my train, actually sitting at the train station and writing, because I don't have a computer there. I can't get distracted. And I do it every day now before I go to work, which is...
Yeah, that's great.
At least using 20 minutes. So.
Yeah. And distractions are a really big reason why a lot of people don't make as much progress as they would like to. And so one of the things that, we say about that, like you say with the computer, that can be a huge distraction. You're trying to actually, if you're trying to write on your computer, but emails are popping up and, Skype calls are coming in and all sorts of things are happening. And, what I say to people is, well, turn your email off. And a lot of people are really surprised that you can even do that. So, you can turn it off, and you should turn it off if you want to be productive.
What are the top 3 things you need to help you plan and manage your writing?
Well, I think, first of all, setting goals for yourself is really important. So they've got to be really specific and they've got to be achievable. So, you could sit and say, all right, I'm going to write for 6 hours a day, but if you have a full-time job, then that's probably really unrealistic and probably unnecessary as well. So it can be something as simple as saying, I'm going to write for 10 minutes every day, or I'm going to write for 3 hours every Sunday afternoon, or I'm going to write 500 words. a day. It could be a time-based, it could be words-based, and it could be quite small. It doesn't have to be something really huge and unachievable. So it needs to be quite specific, and then it needs to be achievable, and that makes it easier to actually follow through on those goals. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is to give yourself a deadline. One of the things that I talk about in the workshop is you can go to a lot of workshops, or there's a lot of books out there or blogs or other things helping you with how to get published. And that's all excellent. I said, but the one way to not get published is not to write anything. So that's really key part of it all. Giving yourself a deadline is really important. And when I published my book Pivot Point, I actually planned the book launch before I'd finished writing the book. So I had booked the venue, people knew that it was happening, I'd sent invitations, I'd got people to mark the date, and in fact I haven't even quite finished writing, but that gave myself a really hard deadline to say, well, not only has my writing got to be finished, but all those other processes that go into the publishing have got to be finished by then. And so I worked back from that date as my project. I mean, if you don't do that, then you can just let it go on for years and years, and just never quite get around to finishing things. Yeah.
Mm. And going over things a lot too.
Yeah, that's true. And then the other thing is to make writing a habit. So just like you've said, you've found a space in your day where you can fit it in and do it every day. And that's the way to really be productive, is to not think, well, I've got to wait until I've got this year off work, because that's probably never going to happen for most people, or I've got to wait until I have a great flash of inspiration, because that's not generally how that works either. You've got to get in the habit of doing it regularly, and so that's really important.
So I suppose we're coming to the end of the interview, and the final thing that I wanted to ask you was, what's the most common writing obstacle, and what are some ways of overcoming it?
So often people struggle with how to get started, I think. And again, I think the things I've talked about already, having those goals set down and knowing, and we work through some exercises in the workshop to help you understand why you want to write, or why this particular project is important to you. And I think that really helps people's motivation. It probably sounds a bit silly, but the simple answer is just to write. Don't wait for inspiration. You've got to get what's in your head out onto the page. Sitting with a blank page is not getting you anywhere. So there's a few there's lots of ways that, I guess there's lots of different techniques or exercises that people use to do that. But I think it's great to use writing exercises as a stimulus to start your writing. So taking whatever small inspiration you might have, either starting where you last left off, or keeping a scrapbook of ideas or snippets or notes and using that as a stimulus. And then also, as I've already talked about, setting a regular goal every day and just sitting down. If you're saying, I'm going to sit for half an hour, now even if you write nothing but you still sat for half an hour, then that's some progress. But what you'll find, of course, is that once you do allocate that time, well, the words will come. So don't worry about it being perfect. I think a lot of people get hung up about their editing as they in their head, instead of just writing first and then editing later. Also, the other thing to say about that, there's lots of tools available nowadays to help you out. There are a million apps and all sorts of programs that you can use to help you, but don't let the search for the perfect tool become a distraction in itself and a source of procrastination, because in the end, to get started with your writing, all you need is a pencil and a paper. So don't let all those other things actually become a hindrance to getting on with the actual business of getting the words out of your head and onto the paper. That's really what it's all about in the end.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Monique. That's been wonderful.
That's all right. You're welcome.